Today, we're going to take a look and see if Lady Gaga is in the Illuminati. Now, of course, when I say the Illuminati, I'm referring to this collective group of people that are occultists, and this umbrella covers Satanists, Luciferians, or pretty much anyone who is trying to take a part of this evolution of consciousness through the use of media and entertainment in which they show us images that speak to our subconscious. We'll talk a little bit more about that as this analysis goes on. First, let's take a look at the origins of Lady Gaga and the Lena Morgana conspiracy. Now, before Stefani Germanotta became Lady Gaga, with the release of 2008's The Fame, she worked with a woman named Lena Morgana. And this female was also a rising star. She was a model, actress, and musician. And she had a record contract with Sony, and she was preparing to release an album, and she had a very promising future. Lady Gaga actually worked on a song called Wonderland with her, and allegedly there was many more songs they worked on together that never got released. The reason I'm talking about Lena Morgana is because on October 4th, 2008, she was found dead after falling from a 10-story hotel in Staten Island. There aren't any clear stories as to what happened, and there doesn't seem to be any real investigations into this death. So many conspiracy theorists claim that Lady Gaga helped take Morgana out as a blood sacrifice in exchange for fame. Now, why do people say this? It's because when you research the music industry, you'll inevitably find this blend of occultism, blood sacrifices, and pacts with the devil. I know about this because I researched and wrote an entire book on the subject called Sacrifice Magic Behind the Mic. Now, if you look at the trajectory of stardom between Lady Gaga and Morgana, you'll find that they had the same path: musician, actress, fashion interests. They also seem to share the same imagery, which supports this idea that Gaga is somehow harvesting Morgana's soul for her own stardom. In fact, Lena's mother allegedly said that her daughter's soul was trapped by Lady Gaga, which is suggesting some kind of witchcraft or satanic ritual. She said, "Lady Gaga is holding Lena's soul, and I want her soul to be free." Another oddity to consider with Lena's death is that one day prior, she played the role on a pilot episode of Celebrity Ghost Stories as a younger version of Gina Gershon. If you watch that episode, you'll find that the story revolves around a building that Gershon stayed in at college that was referred to as a haunted hotel, where many people died, particularly by suicide.
We started doing research, or we were told that the hotel, it is known as the haunted hotel. There was a lot of deaths in that building.
Fast forward to 2015 and American Horror Story Hotel, you'll find an episode with a character named Sally who was killed by sending her out of the window and falling to her death. Oddly enough, this show also starred Lady Gaga as the Countess, who was a vampire with a model boyfriend, which also echoes Lena Morgana's story because she had a turbulent relationship with a male model before her passing. Another odd connection is in Lady Gaga's video for Paparazzi, where we see her with another male model who pushes her off of a building as well.
Qual clutch?
Now, Lena Morgana's mother had some interesting comments about Lady Gaga, and we'll talk about this later on when we explore Lady Gaga's dark side, where Lena's mother, Yana Morgana, said, "Gaga talks about having a dark and tragic life, but she had everything she wanted in the world. She went to the same high school as Nikki Hilton, her parents were rich, but Lena did have a tough life." So when you research the history of Lady Gaga, you'll find that she also shares something in common with Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and Google's co-founder Sergey Brin. they've all been recruited through gifted children's schools. They were recruited through the Center for Talented Youth at Johns Hopkins and the Duke Talent Identification Program. And these are opportunities that they have for young talents to get into training their actual natural abilities. So to me, it seems that Lady Gaga could have been groomed from youth to be a pawn of the Illuminati for the entertainment industry. She could have also conducted the ritual of the blood sacrifice on Lena Morgana in order to fulfill the satanic pact needed to become famous. And then she shows us this in her other works of art. Indeed, Lady Gaga has been used for many high-profile rituals, from the MTV VMAs to Saturday Night Live performances, shows with the Muppets, and even Disney's Electric Holiday. All of these things she uses to spread symbolism that we've covered in the past on IlluminatiWatcher.com that support this idea of the Illuminati speaking to us on a subconscious level. The symbols speak to us and influence us in ways that we don't fully understand. Another example would be her Fame perfume. In 2012, she released this fragrance, and it, to me, seems like a component of contagion magic, in that people that use it believe they're aligning themselves to Lady Gaga's essence. This is standard practice in the industry because that's why we see celebrity endorsements on products, but this one seems a little different. If you study the ceremonial magic of occultists like Aleister Crowley, you'll find that they use bodily fluids in a manner that further empowers the practitioner. Again, this is a subject I talked about in Sacrifice Magic Behind the Mic, and in it, we talked about how Crowley believed you could use excrement or feces, blood, and semen in order to draw demonic spirits closer to you. So how odd is it when we find out that Lady Gaga's perfume called Fame had blood and semen in it? She said, "Blood and semen is in the perfume, but it doesn't smell like it. You just get sort of the after feeling of sex from the semen, and the blood is sort of primal. And the blood was taken from my own blood sample, so it's like having a sense of me on your skin." So it seems obvious Lady Gaga was dabbling in the dark arts for this fragrance line. And it doesn't stop here. In a lot of her artwork, she does similar dark stuff. For instance, in the Abramovic method, she did this avant-garde performance art where she employed Abramovic's method, which is actually interpreted as the artist's will. Now, this sounds familiar because Crowley experimented with the mind, and he was the one that coined the phrase "do what thou wilt," which talks about the practitioner or the artist doing what the universe tells him he or her should do. Now, Crowley took it many steps further. He expanded the limitations on mind and body, drugs, sex magic, etc. But Abramovic's actually talks about the method, and she says that the work explores the relationship between performer and audience and the limits of the body and the possibilities of the mind. So we find that Lady Gaga used her will in order to be depicted with the horns of Moloch, or perhaps evoking the spirit of Pan, this horned deity that roams the forest. She had a music video for Applause in which she shows us the symbolism of the initiate in the ways of alchemy. She also performed Applause on Good Morning America, and she showed us symbolism of Wizard of Oz. This is important because Kathy O'Brien tells us that Wizard of Oz is used as a tale to condition others, where they blur the line between reality and fantasy. She wrote about her experiences as a MK Ultra mind control slave in Transformation of America, and in it she highlights the usage of Disney films and Wizard of Oz to convey the idea, as above, so below, to the youth. And this is the idea that people can conduct magic and change the universe according to their will. Now, what's interesting here, Frank Baum wrote Wizard of Oz, and he was a follower of Helena Blavatsky's Theosophy, which he learned through her book, The Secret Doctrine. Now, what does Theosophy talk about? It says, he was in agreement with the theosophical belief that man on earth was only one step on a great ladder that passed through many states of consciousness, through many universes, to a final state of enlightenment. How interesting is it that this belief system was also used by occultists such as Adolf Hitler's Nazi Party. So Lady Gaga, she evokes the goddess. And what I'll talk about there is displayed on her art pop album, where she showed us her likeness to the goddess of Venus. If you take a look at this image, it's actually a version of Sandro Botticelli's The Birth of Venus painting, which depicts the Venus goddess emerging from the sea as a fully grown woman. Now, this idea of worshiping the goddess is something we find when we research the Illuminati. They research the Greek Aphrodite, the Babylonian Ishtar, Egyptian Isis, Sumerian Semiramis. We've also got the Wiccan idea of the triple goddess. Now, this goddess in particular of Venus is interesting because it's also referred to as Lucifer or the light bearer. Now, you can see the Illuminati are generally Luciferians. They believe that Lucifer is the misunderstood hero trying to help out mankind. So Lucifer, or Venus, is depicted as a pentagram, which is what we see on the cover to the Art Pop album. The pentagram symbolizes Venus and the morning star of Lucifer due to the path of the star in the sky forming the 5 points on the pentagram. Something else we see on the album cover is the birthing of the egg. Now, this is worship of Ostara. This is what Easter is arguably based on when you consider the pagan side of it. Again, this is worship of the goddess Ostara, which is also known as the Babylonian goddess of Ishtar. They believe that Ishtar fell from heaven in an egg, and people would go try to find her, which would allow her to be reborn and give blessings to the people. So anyways, it's a fertility myth. It's part of the triple goddess. On that Art Pop album, we also saw a video for GUI, and in it we saw symbolism of MK Ultra mind control, as well as that of the goddess, and also the fallen angel of Lucifer, which we already spoke about. And how interesting is it that this was filmed at the Neptune Pool at the famous Hearst Castle in California. This pool was built as an actual Roman temple, complete with the goddess symbolism of the 8-pointed star of Ishtar. Now, this is a concept I've talked about in my Kubrick's Code project, where I explore The Shining, A Clockwork Orange, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Eyes Wide Shut. And in it, I reveal the star of Ishtar and its many occurrences. So why is Lady Gaga evoking this goddess? Well, you have to read the occult literature, particularly Kenneth Anger's The Magical Revival. These occultists believe that sex magic is used for spiritual attainment. And this is followed by all the ancient cultures that were into this kind of esoteric knowledge. And it has this idea of this chakra point related to death and the orgasm. And Venus is known as the goddess of love, who is used sexually to transcend consciousness. Now, when we talk about the consciousness, a lot of the Eastern religious stuff comes up. For example, in 2015, Lady Gaga participated in the Emotion Revolution, in which she told us that she found ways for dealing with anxieties by performing some of these Eastern religious practices that Crowley and Kenneth Grant also utilized. She said she uses techniques to deal with her anxiety and depression, like Ayurvedic medicine, meditation, and mantras. Now, these all have deep occult meanings. If you look at the left-hand path of these ancient religions such as Hinduism, you can find that there's attempts to make contact with deities through the use of these practices such as meditation and yoga. Now, the reason they do all of this is because I believe it's part of an initiation. For example, in the Grammys in 2016, she showed us herself inside of a cube, which is Saturn symbolism. And this symbolizes the blackening of the alchemist as well as the Brotherhood of Saturn. Now, the Brotherhood of Saturn was a magical order, similar to many of these occult groups we're talking about, whether it's New Age, Freemasonry, or Thelema. They all revolve around the idea of mastering occult and esoteric knowledge. We've already talked about this before, the duality aspects, that as above, so below, the idea that the cosmos is tied in with the natural material world. The reason why they do this is to advance and evolve oneself through a series of rituals and steps. The Brotherhood of Saturn has 33 steps. that one needs to achieve enlightenment. This is similar to the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry with the 33 degrees. But the end of the path is self-deification. It's the idea that these people can become gods. So the reason why she's doing this is because she is part of the initiation to become godlike. She's channeling spirits to further enlighten herself in these ways of the occult. And she is becoming the next goddess, and she is being used by the Illuminati. Now, she's being used by the Illuminati in order to make contact with extraterrestrial entities. I know that sounds crazy, but there's this growing deception of making contact, and she is playing a part of this, I believe. They're doing this for a variety of reasons, but the truth is they're trying to sell the masses in the idea of extraterrestrial life through the idea of evolution and science, and you'll see this unfold in the following years, mark my words. They're going to try to prove to us that aliens exist. Now, in 2015, Lady Gaga was supposed to ride the Virgin Galactic spaceship into zero gravity in order to be the first one to sing in outer space. It was this high-profile event. Now, how interesting is it that on October 31st, on a test flight, it crashed and killed the pilot. So it got canceled, postponed, I should say, for a year. On the night of October 31st, which is a major pagan blood sacrifice night. Lady Gaga's also since talked about being married in space. This is all publicity stunts trying to get us interested in going out to the cosmos, because I believe this is the intention of NASA, who was the original occultist, if you consider Jack Parsons, who was one of the founding fathers of space travel. He liked to explore ideas of the universal consciousness. He believed that he could make contact with other dimensions, and he thought he did. And he said that he was now the Antichrist, and he was here to bring about Aleister Crowley's Aeon of Horus and to destroy Christianity. Famed Nazi scientist Werner von Braun came to America on Operation Paperclip, and he was an avid follower of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who was actually the first ancient astronaut theorist. Now, he was exposed to the occultism of Hitler and the Nazis while he was a member of the Nazis, and perhaps he was even part of the experiment where they used the Vril Society to channel extraterrestrial entities in an attempt to learn the secrets of space travel, which is arguably why the Allied forces saw these Foo Fighters, these flying saucers, because Hitler was trying to make them. Whether it be through the Die Glocke experiments or not, the fact remains that they were trying to channel ET entities in order to advance themselves, to enlighten themselves. Aleister Crowley also believed that ETs were an advanced race, and we had to make contact with them in order to evolve as a species. He talked about this in his book Magic Without Tears. So it seems that not only do the Illuminati seek to channel these spirits, particularly of the ancient pagan goddesses, but they also want to make contact with a darker demonic presence, which is being called the aliens. We're currently being conditioned through entertainment, such as the Ancient Aliens television show, as well as science and evolution, to believe in this idea of extraterrestrial life, and I think this is due to deceptions of a satanic influence. Occultists from many years ago tried to bring about the destruction of Christianity, and today they are doing this with science and entertainment in order to make it a reality. I propose these demons are using these channels for their own purposes, and Lady Gaga is one of their victims. She had a video called Do What You Want that was directed by alleged sexual handler Terry Richardson, in which she is impregnated through rape. And these lyrics suggest she was subjected to MK Ultra mind control when she says, "You can't have my heart and you won't use my mind, but do what you want with my body." Now, obviously, this sounds very familiar to Crowley's Do What Thou Wilt. So I believe Lady Gaga is being used by the Illuminati to channel these demonic aliens, and her symptoms of her problems suggest this to be so. David Jacobs talks about this in The Threat. He says, Once joined with the abductee's neural pathways, the alien essentially has free rein to do what he wants. The abductee is no longer in control of his own thoughts. The aliens can exercise absolute power over the minds and bodies of the abductees. They can make the abductees think, feel, visualize, or do anything the aliens want, which is what Lady Gaga talks about in her song Do What You Want. In 2013, she went on Howard Stern and admitted to hearing voices, and then she jokes about how it could be an alien, and that she can't turn it off, and it's a chaotic state of being.
Could have easily been that way if the music industry had gotten to you and you had really gotten depressed. I mean, did you say there was a time in your life you were hearing voices in your head, right?
I still do.
What does that mean, voices in the head?
I'm just a really very creative person.
Right.
And I just am always hearing music and voices and songs and all sorts of
What
things.
are the voices saying? Anything weird?
I mean, no, nothing like, they're not telling me to do anything.
They don't command you to do stuff.
No, it's not like a person, it's not an alien. Well, maybe sometimes. It's really just more sounds and emotions and just.
Does it ever get distracting? Do you ever get upset by it?
It's very distracting and it's very upsetting it's very chaotic and.
You can't turn it off?
Mm-mm.
That's why I think you smoked a lot of weed.
Yeah.
Probably helped you turn it off.
Yeah. Oh, what do you mean? Probably it did.
Wow.
After 2 joints, I couldn't. No, I wasn't thinking about anything.
Let's talk about Lady Gaga and the dark side. Many of these occultists, they try to tap into this dark side because they believe it can give them all of this kind of insight into their own being. Carl Jung talked about this. Many occultists have, actually. And a lot of these celebrities seem to do this, and they lose their mind as part of the process. Aleister Crowley warned about doing this, and when he talks about contacting the dark side, he talks about the abyss and the Corone Zone entity on the other side, and says you have to be prepared to do this because you can destroy yourself in the process. So I think Lady Gaga and these celebrities, they are used to try to make contact with this dark side, and they're not ready for it, and they lose their mind. Alex Jones claimed that Lady Gaga is terrorized by demons. And I think that's because of this channeling of spirits and exploring the dark side.
And you've got all these shows where Lucifer's this sweet guy out in L.A., on TV now, and he loves everybody. I mean, these people are really trying to bring in this satanic takeover. And you look at Lady Gaga has to have bodyguards around her at night because she's terrorized by demons and ghosts and screaming and yelling and flopping around. Kesha, all these people have become just conduits of interdimensional evil, whatever you want to call it. It is insane.
In 2012, it was also reported that Lady Gaga was seeking help with a recurring nightmare about the devil. She said, I have this recurring dream where there's a phantom in my home, and he takes me into a room where there's a blonde girl with ropes tied to her limbs, pulling her apart. I told Deepak, referring to Deepak Chopra, I told Deepak the dream was so terrifying, I thought somehow that a devil force was trying to take hold of me. Now, unfortunately, she looked for help from the New Age star Deepak Chopra, who, in my opinion, is part of the problem, and he had this advice for her, which isn't surprising. Lady Gaga says, Deepak laughed and told me that I should learn to embrace my own insanity. I told him, the devil is trying to take me, Deepak. I'm a good girl. Chopra's reply, don't worry. Of course he said don't worry. He's part of this New Age agenda, which is all Helena Blavatsky's theosophy, which is part of the whole occultist agenda. Lady Gaga also said she wanted to learn how to levitate from Deepak. She says, I want to go into a coma and levitate. I'm a very spiritual person. Deepak is the most influential person in my life. His message is a true inspiration. He helps me to reach inside my spirituality, and we take it to the next level. Now, this is all part of the belief of this idea of latent powers within man that we can tap into. Again, we're talking about the evolution. They think, evolutionary speaking, we've evolved out of these kind of hidden powers. Helena Blavatsky talked about this in Collected Writings. She says, as the highest development, physically and spiritually on earth, of the creative cause, man should aim to solve the mystery of his being. She later says, he should therefore study to develop his latent powers and inform himself respecting the laws of magnetism, electricity, and all other forms of force, whether of the seen or unseen universes. Now, this is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the obsession with today's entertainment and this idea of supernatural abilities. It's all part of this occult agenda. And Blavatsky thought that mankind could harness the powers of magnetism in order to levitate. This is the idea of the repulsion of like polarities. It doesn't work. Only satanic forces can make someone levitate. It's all an illusion. In 2014, Lady Gaga recited a poem at the Lou that I called the Satanic Prayer, in which she seems to be exploring a dark, even satanic side.
So it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. The next day another turn came, and so it continued always the same. Coitus, Christ, curses, ejaculation, always the same. One of the old women tied the daily victim onto the machine. He then was informed and went into the boudoir, masturbating a bit in front of her vagina, swearing, cursing, then began to fuck, let out screams of lust, and from the moment of ejaculation began to roar like a bull. He walked out not even looking at the woman and repeated this 3 to 4 times on the same day with the same.
The next year in 2015, Lady Gaga had a lead role on the cast of American Horror Story Hotel. She played the vampire called the Countess and tells us that every man has a shadow side they must feed. Now, this is precisely how the occult thinks. They use this idea of duality to explore the darkest side of themselves in order to find the light. Lady Gaga also addressed this in Entertainment Weekly when she told them that American Horror Story signaled a return for her to the art of darkness. She said, "It will inform me from this day forward every day more and more." Consider the nihilist philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and when he said, "Who wishes to be creative must first destroy and smash accepted values." Now that's Lady Gaga's exact MO. She uses all of this outrageous stuff to destroy and smash accepted values, similar to what Aleister Crowley did. She also talked about this when she talks about this guru named Osho, when she said, "The creativity is the greatest way of rebellion." Now I think she's referencing the infamous rebel Lucifer. He is the archetype of rebellion, and he fell from the heavens for rebelling and became Satan. Occultists seem to seek desperately to tap into this dark side where evil resides. They want to find out how evil they can be, and to me this only satisfies this dark overlord who reigns over the material world and wants to lure us into his trappings. And in conclusion, we're going to talk about a few more ideas here, where we talk about how these celebrities are indoctrinated by these occult teachings, and then they show it to us through entertainment. They think they're exploring their dark sides, but you'll find that this causes mental breakdowns and explains why we have to watch the same story over and over of the rise and fall of these celebrities. Lady Gaga told the Mirror that she was traumatized by her initial experiences with fame. She said she was taking medication after feeling traumatized by her career's sudden takeoff. After releasing her last pop album in 2013, she admitted suffering a period of depression that left her feeling exhausted, like I was dying. When my career took off, I don't remember anything at all. It's like I'm traumatized. I needed time to recalibrate my soul. Now, could it be that Lady Gaga had to recalibrate her soul because she was part of the Illuminati blood sacrifice of Lena Morgana? Is Lady Gaga being used by the Illuminati to channel entities? Is the archetype of the goddess and the devil being used to create her music? All of these things beg for an answer, and I believe we will find one in due time. For now, if I was to answer the question, is Lady Gaga in the Illuminati, I'd have to say yes. She may not realize it, but she's being used to explore the boundaries of reality, which only leads one into the darkest realm possible.